Hi, welcome to the Optimising Your Brilliance podcast, where we get to the source of what makes people brilliant and explore how to eradicate the barriers that stop you from shining. By shining, I mean being at your absolute best in both work and life. You'll hear from business and thought leaders who bear all and share their insider secrets, along with my episodes focused on optimising your performance, productivity, success and well-being. My name is Estelle Reid, founder of Be, executive coach, speaker and best-selling author of Inner Brilliance, Out to Shine, 10 Antidotes to Imposter Syndrome, Workaholism and Stress. So if you're ready to take your work life to the next level, let's begin. Welcome to season 4 highlights episode. I really didn't know what to expect when I relaunched my podcast earlier in the summer. It was a bit of an experiment and I didn't know how long I would continue with it. But all I knew is that I wanted to be able to help as many people as possible. I also really was keen to get inside the mindsets of these brilliant people, because I'm privileged in my coaching consultancy to sit and listen to these brilliant minds. And what struck me is that they often have similar thoughts. And I would catch myself saying, look, you're not on your own. Other people think and feel like this. And so my intention was to get my guests to share their inner thoughts so that people could relax and be easy and go, do you know what? I'm not on my own and I am an okay person. The other aspect as well is these brilliant people all seem to have some things in common. First of all, bravery. It takes bravery to come on a podcast. Even now, I still get nervous when I hit record. And so the fact that they are prepared to come on, bare their souls to you, share with you their mistakes, but also what those mistakes taught them along the way and how they've grown and flourished from those experiences. And there was a common theme of feeling the fear and do it anyway. I love that book, Susan Jeffers. But you can hear that my guests actually put that into practice, that regardless of what they fear, they still push themselves forward. The other common theme is that they're often working towards goals, dreams, ambitions. And so being clear about where they're headed seems to be really important. And for those of you that are listening to this and thinking, yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be achieving in 2026, I've got an episode coming up which focuses on removing self-sabotage and setting goals and working towards goals in a way that you don't self-sabotage. That's coming up in the next 2 episodes. The other thing that I noticed with these people that I interviewed is their mindset. It's not that they don't think negatively, but it's that they catch themselves having those thoughts and then they're able to reframe them and think differently. The other fantastic habits I noticed is it seems that discipline and routine is key. The other trend I noticed is that anybody who's excelling in their field, they tend to be fairly obsessive. When I think about my golf coach, Simon Edwards, his episode, and he went all the way to the Open, and we were having a debate about obsessiveness and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I guess in my mind, as a recovered workaholic, I am always nervous about obsessiveness. And I guess I perceived it as being a bad thing, but actually you can reframe that as you're actually in line with purpose and mission, and provided that obsessiveness doesn't come or isn't driven with something negative behind it. So for example, the reason I was a workaholic is because I just didn't feel good enough. Whereas if we can remove those feelings and realize that we are enough, then actually, if we're really focused on something and we're doing it because we're making a difference, I think that's got a different energy behind it. The other thing I noticed is that the guests that came on, they were really honest. We had some real raw conversations. When I think about Neil Jinx's conversation and that moment he had when he was in, I think it was the recording studio, that was just such a poignant moment. It was really kind of heart in your mouth moment, along with the episode with Martin Williams, who was talking about his struggles with suicidal thoughts and how he overcame them. And what was interesting with both of those stories is that there was a single moment where everything just seemed to change. So again, I felt privileged to listen to their stories. Both of those stories I know will help people, and it's a reminder to reach out for help. Don't suffer in silence. One of the phrases we have in our household is that feelings do come and go, and it doesn't matter how dark those moments are, there's always a solution. And sometimes we've just got to process those feelings, move beyond them, but also share them in a safe space. And then the final thing was just how resilient my guests are. I think sometimes we're in a generation now where we're Instagram perfect. I have a personal Instagram account and it's my own little personal account, but it's there as a reminder of all of the moments in my life that are the peak happiness moments. And of course, it can look like, oh, look at her with a perfect life. That's not what it's about. And then, do you know what? If I am having an off day, I will go and I'll rewatch some of my Instagram reels of the best moments. And life isn't like that, is it? And it's not to say that as a family, we don't have our tough moments. We absolutely do, and we absolutely have. And as we close out on year 2 of our relocation to Cumbria, that was a big deal for our family because we're all massively like to be stable and to not have much change. But that was going back to the point about setting goals, dreams, ambitions. I'm all for that for clients. Live your best life. That was another theme that came out from all my guests. They spoke about we're only here once, so let's make it a really good once. And that was the idea behind us breaking out of our comfort zone, which again has been a theme with all of my guests, feeling the fear, suppressing those what if questions, what if it all goes wrong? And it could have gone all Pete Dong, and proceeding anyway. And I have to say, 2 years on, I got the most magical message from my daughter yesterday saying, in fact, I'll read it out. I can't believe it's been 2 years, but I also feel like I've lived here forever. Thank you. I'm proud of both of you because it wasn't just me who struggled. You two are the reason we're here. So I'm very grateful for that. And thank you, Mum, for encouraging me and Dad to live up here. It's the best decision you ever made. Now, so that absolutely touched my heart because my ultimate fear was that by relocating my family up here, it would ruin their lives, I guess. And it's not been without bumps in the road at all. We've had our fair few bumps, but the point is that's life, isn't it? It never is plain sailing, but it's how we handle those bumps in the road. And that's my intention with this podcast, is to give you some tools, some ideas, something that you can learn from other brilliant minds that help you to deal with those difficult moments, but also help you work towards your dream, your goal, your ambition to help you, as I said earlier, lead your very best life. So I hope you enjoy the reels coming up. The thing that I have absolutely loved, and it's been an inadvertent benefit of running this podcast, is how much I've learned from my guests. They've just been so inspiring. And so this is for you guys. Thank you so much for being brave guests, for sharing your wisdom. I really think you've been wonderful. So here goes. Into what people fear the most, identified that presenting came first and death came third.
I think the thing that sets me apart from other people is I was brought up in a hotel. I once asked Noel Edmonds for going his helicopter because he landed it at the hotel. And he said, that sounds really dismissive, but I'm not competing with other people. I'm only ever competing with myself. I was like, the audience is only made up of people. It's just other people. We all have the same bodily functions.
So HR was brand new to me. I remember being asked to do an org chart, an organisation chart, and I was there looking on Excel, looking at a bar chart, a pie chart, can't find an organisation chart, like what is that? And ended up getting myself into a bit of trouble because I was young and I didn't understand that, you know, the reason for being late, for putting petrol in your car, it wasn't an adequate excuse. Especially when it was a few times. But I think that was something, you know, that I still have to.
I've sacked off WhatsApp last year.
Oh, wow.
And it has stemmed some of the flow of noise.
I learn from listening, I learn from people, conversations, doing. I do not learn from sitting in a classroom, reading a book, writing a 2,000-word essay on HR context.
I always say there's no one more youer than you. And as corny as it sounds, it's so true. And when you've done all that, you just feel instantly better because, you know, you're not so self-conscious then. And just the other thing is it leads you into being present and in the moment. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because we're all so worked up about all this stuff that's outside of our control. The more you live in the moment, the more you come to life, is what I believe. If you're worrying about the past and the future, this is where half your problems lie. Be present.
What we perceive, we receive. So whatever lens we're looking through, that's what we get more of.
Once I became a mother, it was like, okay, I had to have a word with myself and I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. You can't let, you know, circumstances dictate it. You need to flip this on its head. And so I'm stepping away from that role in a couple of weeks' time. I can't continue because it drains my energy levels so much. It would be easier and make sense in the current climate for me to continue in that role because it's regular income, it's a salaried position, but my energy, it just goes like that. So I've had to go, no, I need to shut that off and I need to go and do something else. Do you know what's the worst thing that can happen? Go and have a go. Massive fan of Susan Jeffries, Feel the Fairies. Yeah. So that's my motto. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Suicidal thoughts in the boardroom are more common than you probably realise. This conversation is as real as it gets. The cycle of fear needs to be broken to avoid the broken person.
The thing that was different this time was that I told people. And that was, for me, the big change. Yeah. And it's enabled me to, you know, for instance, talk about it now. Yeah. I would say that everything is incomplete. Realize that there is no great finished article somewhere. Once you realize that mistakes will happen, don't let them drag you down. Let's have the open and honest thing without fear. And that's why I use the fear there in that post, is that people fear what's going to happen if they do it. But we've got to be able to do it without fear. Listen to yourself in the way that you listen to others.
But I think the thing that saddens me is when I coach amazing women that step away from promotion or from a business because
when I'm come back from work and I just want to sit and watch Netflix or whatever, there's a real sort of visualization of me crawling on my hands and knees in that half marathon in June. That, no, Philippa, you can go out and do a run, or you can get out on your bike if it's still light. And or get on the turbo trainer and do like however many minutes you can actually manage.
We had to learn how to communicate with each other, but we had serious marital issues to the extent where we were thinking about separating. But they said, look, you could risk you not being able to use your arm and all that kind of thing. Anyway, what that did, it did push us right to the very edge. And it was a wake-up call for, this person is just so important to me, and let's get things back on track. And she said to me, I think you've either had a heart attack or you're having a heart attack, and I'm going to call an ambulance. And so in that moment, I was like, what? I thought I've got asthma. And then that's when I was pushed right to the very edge, and it was like life flashed before me.
I played the Open Championship in 2010 at St Andrews in front of my mum and dad, which was possibly the coolest thing I've ever done. There was a study done from the Australian Academy of Sport years ago now, and they asked children what they enjoyed most about sport, and they said playing and winning and being with my friends and all the rest of it. And then they asked them what they least liked about it, and they said the car ride home, because they got critiqued in the car on the way home. It makes a noise like I've never heard. Yeah, it's come off the club face. Oh my word, I've never heard anything like this. It was like watching Mozart, or it was like watching a genius.
If there's conflict, it's just a lot of shouting and swearing, and it's soon resolved, to be fair. For quite a number of years, I was basically afraid of flying, really very anxious about flying. There's people that got on the plane and got off before it took off, because they literally left the door open till the last minute and said, look, we're not forcing anyone to do this. He says, actually, we told you a bit of a lie. He says, we're actually not doing the flight tomorrow, we're doing it tonight.
The minute they closed that door, I felt trapped. One of the things that I took away from it was people that excel, they absolutely do work towards being the best that they can be, but they are obsessive about their thing.
I always remember watching EastEnders on TV and the first gay couple appearing in a soap opera, and my dad being horrified at that. And I guess that delivered the message to me that, that is wholly inappropriate and you can never go down that route, kind of thing. I remember being sat in a recording studio where the only solution I could come up with was, I was so shocked that I could consider that as an option. And I literally called my mother that day, and she was heartbroken, because she did have that expectation that I would get married to a girl and deliver these grandchildren and whatever. So you've shattered that illusion instantly.
I train twice a week with a trainer, which is one of my non-negotiables, doing strength training, which I think when you get to a certain age, as a woman, it becomes really important that you train with weights to build up muscle mass and your bone density and all those sorts of things. I grew up in quite an entrepreneurial family, so I was always surrounded by business, surrounded by people working very hard, but from a very working class background. You could just sit at home and do nothing and keep your head down. But to me, that's a life half lived. If you really want to look back and think, none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow. I just want to know, if something did happen tomorrow, I could say to my kids, you know what, I had a great time. I did everything I wanted to do, even though I was terrified of most of it along the way. But there's nothing that I haven't done that I didn't really want to do.
So when I reflect back on that, I ended up being a newly qualified solicitor doing M&A work in a law firm in Birmingham without having had any plans to do any of that, really. I just sort of ended up falling into that by virtue of, I think, as I said, getting on that conveyor belt and not making a conscious decision to get off it. I wonder if I could play the guitar. Or I'm not going to know unless I buy a guitar and try it. You could spend all your life regretting something. And I always think you never know whether that opportunity is going to come again. And if you're not self-improving or doing something different, or I just think, again, it's a bit of a wasted life, isn't it? Aren't we here to experience new things and try things out and work out what we can do really well, and maybe the things we can't do so well? But you never know what's going to hit you around the corner. I think I always assumed, as I said earlier, that would live forever and that things would carry on just landing nicely for me.
Christmas can be a tricky time in that, the dynamics around that Christmas table, to be honest, they're not too much different to the dynamics around the boardroom table. And one of the grown adults goes, "Mummy loves me the most," or something like that. And that's the same when it comes to our own Christmas events. Sometimes we can rub each other up the wrong way. But as Mel Robbins said recently, that really we're just all 8-year-olds in adult bodies. This is the trigger. So let's say, for example, your sibling kicks off because you've asked them to do something. And at a deeper level, this makes them feel controlled, bossed about, told what to do. And so they answer back in a curt or a bit of a rude way. So they're having a tantrum. It's interesting how much time, energy we waste speaking to other people about our issues, but also we back away from dealing with them ourselves, when in actual fact, it is just a conversation. If you'd like to be notified when the next episode drops, remember to subscribe. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. Finally, if any of these topics have sparked your interest and you'd like to work with me, you can apply for a free discovery call at estellereed.com. Let's see if we're a good fit. You'll also find plenty of free resources there. I'm Estelle Reed, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author, and this has been the Optimising Your Brilliance podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for any specific advice related to your situation.